Well. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. We are here with our girl talk today. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being live with us. I think everybody can see we are um, full in effect today. So thank you again for being here. We are here with your girl, Charlotte Watson, on your Girl Talk on Fridays at 7 o'clock. Be sure to go to our my link tree, thanks to you, Kim Davis, Carol. Oh, no, she will kill me for that. Um, you know who you Kim is though, so not Carol. You Kim Davis, and I can never say her last name, so I'm going to say Jude's wife. There you go. You Kim, Jude's wife. She is going to, she has given me some information to make sure that I can streamline all of my social media information. So thank you for that. Go to Linktree and you can get all of that information there. We are so excited to have one returning guest and one new guest with us this week. We're excited because Marvis Mosley is returning to us. And if you do not remember who Marvis Mosley is, he is or was a, hold on just a second and let me get all of his information here. Marvis Mosley, not only is he a father of two, but he's married. He has a master's in criminal justice leadership. He has a bachelor's in criminal justice. He's 20 years police career, 5 years as a chief of police, master police officer, police instructor, police trainer, a taser instructor, as well as now he's currently a high school criminal justice teacher. And hoorah to the U.S. Marine Corps. So he was also a Marine veteran. So we are thankful to have him on line with us to give us some different perspectives on just some of this stuff that's going on. Not only do we have Marvis Mosley, but we have another gentleman who has been a really good friend of mine for years. And we worked together in a couple of businesses, and just an impeccable guy. He's a retired sergeant of the Dallas Police Department for more than 31 years. He's a former PAL sergeant, and that's the Community Engagement Unit. And currently he's working with, he retired, but he went back to work. But just because he cannot not be a part of what's going on in the community because of his passion. So he is now working with and the director of Shop Talk. You'll get a chance to hear a little bit more about Shop Talk, but that is with One Community USA. Thank you guys for being on with us tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Right. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So let's just jump right into what's going on around the globe. Tell me, guys. Well, and before we get started, guys, if you have any questions, you can text them to me or you can post them on Facebook as we are live. You can post them to us and we will get to your questions as quickly as we can. But if you would, text them or send your questions to us and we'll try to get them answered. What in the HE double hockey sticks is going on right now with these police officers? The insurrection happened, and I know we've talked about it here at the show, just how, racism is a heart issue. It's a heart issue. It's not a political issue. It's just a heart issue. And so when you're hiring people, you can't really look at a person's heart to see whether or not this person is racist. This is what has transpired now is all of a sudden, they're finding out that all of these police officers are nationalists. police officers are racist, and all of a sudden, and we've been saying this for, I've been doing Girl Talk now for a year. We've been saying that all along. Is some of the reasons that individuals are being killed in the street is because these people don't like Black and brown people. So it makes it easy for them to shoot them in the street. Tell me what your take is. You've got together combined, you all have over 50 years of experience in policing. Talk to me about what is happening and what's going on. What are your thoughts about what's going on?
Okay, I'll get started. You don't stop being who you are just because you put on a uniform. And I think that's what's important. Before a person puts on a uniform, they have a life, and that life could be
on around the globe.
Could be good, could be bad, so yes, it doesn't surprise me, Charlotte, what you're seeing or what you're hearing, because people are who they are, and they are like that before they became officers. Now, somewhere in the process of hiring and background, maybe some things were left off, but I just believe that what you're seeing is not surprising, or it should not surprise you, because that's who people are. We have a lifestyle prior to that, but how good or how bad it may be. Yeah. So that's what I believe, kind of sort of right now.
All right, community activists, partnership, pals, building bridges with these people. What's going on with them?
Well, I would also echo what Mr. Mosley said as well. The law enforcement profession, that's what we do. That's not should be who you are. Just like he said, you're a mom, you're a dad, you're a father, you're a son. All those things don't change. But like you said, you can't when you hire somebody in the process, and I will say this, and I don't make any excuses for the bad behavior, because anybody doing something that's against the law and that's not following the rules and regulations should be held accountable, just plain and simple.
Right.
But you also have to keep in mind, in the United States alone, it's probably right around 650,000 law enforcement officers. So in any profession, it doesn't matter what it is.
Right.
Out of 650,000, you're gonna have some bad apples.
Right.
Now, those bad apples need to be dealt with, and need to be dealt with strictly, in a very harsh and strictly manner. So other officers will realize that this won't be tolerated. But the bottom line is, uh, it starts in the heart, just like you said. It starts in the heart. It has to be, when you're growing up. It depends on what part of the country that you grow up in. But if you going to be a police officer, or if you're going to be in law enforcement, you have to be flexible, you have to be understanding, and you have to be willing to think outside the box. You can't do what everybody else is doing. You can't think like everybody else is thinking. You have to be willing to make some adjustment if you are committed to serve the citizens. And that's what it's all about, making sure the citizens of the United States are safe and dealt with on a fairly basis. Everybody's treated fairly.
Well, and I think fairly is the operative word, because I truly believe, and you guys may agree with me or not, but there are two justice systems. I believe that there are two justice systems. So what's fair to one group of people is not necessarily fair to another group, when there is when ethnicity plays a part in that. So we're seeing the police officers who were involved in this insurrection. So I'm just waiting to see how the justice system is going to fall on them because of their color. And we know that generally, in fact, I was listening to Joe Madison, the Black Eagle, yesterday, and he was talking about, all of the people who have gotten arrested behind this. They're out of jail, they've got their attorneys or what have you, but the one little Black guy that was arrested with the rest of those guys, he's still sitting in jail. Still sitting in jail. So where does the fairness come in, or how do you feel like do you feel like these police officers are going to really get, what's deserved, the harsh punishment that they deserve?
Charlotte, there is a process, and it's due process, and I'm not going to say if they're going to get the harsh punishment they deserve, because I don't know all the facts. We don't know what's going on. I know I've heard about what some of the officers have done or being involved in, and I understand it. But I would say allow the process to go through, allow them to be looked upon, or not necessarily judged, but allow the system to work. If they have done something wrong, okay, then allow the people, not the people, but allow the system to work itself out. Now, do I think something may happen to them or something? Probably not, Charlotte. I mean, but I'm going to say allow the system to work. If they did something wrong, let the Capitol Police investigate. Let them do what they have to do in order to find out what's really going on. That's what I'm saying. I haven't looked at it much. I haven't followed it. I know some of the officers are guilty. Some are even committing suicide, what I'm hearing and understanding. And that could be guilt because of their involvement.
Absolutely.
And I believe that even the Capitol Police Chief, he has resigned as a result. And then the lieutenant that I guess turned the guard around, So yes, all of this stuff is being revealed. And the people on the bottom that allowed it to happen, I would say just let that play itself out, because the real issues are at the top, Charlotte. We're not going to get to that.
Right.
You're not going to get to that. So you're talking about some guys that guard a door, or check at a checkpoint. Okay.
Right.
But the real issue is who hired them. Or the real issue is the policies and procedures in place in which you kept them hired, or the background check. That's what we're talking about. So when you start asking me about the little man, no, we need the big man. But Charlotte, unfortunately, we probably won't ever get that. We won't probably ever get that. No. Yes, somebody opened the door, somebody gave him the key, and yes, people came inside. But that officer just didn't start at the Capitol that day. He's been a Capitol member for a long time.
So, and with that being said, I've had a couple of questions or comments. One, Kevin Haynes, which is someone that in his community, he's been in his community and was police chief in the area before, and has worked in law enforcement for many years. And he said, I've dealt with racist colleagues my entire law enforcement career, and it got worse the higher he climbed. And I know that he's worked in several different areas in the school system. He worked, in I believe Red Oak or one of the other cities. So I am sure that it's bad. It's bad on us, really, in any profession, the higher that we go. But one of the other questions was, since we know that the police officers in the higher ranks is where this is coming from, and we probably won't ever get to touch them, do you feel, and what is it that you see that we need to do with the criminal justice reform? Need reforming. How do we reform it? Where does it begin to reform?
Well, this is just my opinion, but it definitely has to start at the top. It needs to be some things that are nationwide. Unfortunately, some of the smaller cities versus some of the larger cities, policies and procedures are completely different. So in order to get everybody on the same page, it needs to be some reform that's nationwide. Whatever goes on in Dallas, whatever policy or procedures that affect Dallas. If somebody makes a mistake, it's going to affect everybody else around the country. So we have to get on the same page. Let me give you a perfect example. If you have a bad officer that gets in trouble here in Dallas and they get laid off, they get fired, or they get opportunity to retire or whatever happens, a lot of times they will fall through the cracks and they will go to a smaller city because that smaller city don't have the resources to
Right.
train that officer. You know, to get the training that a Dallas officer gets, it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars over a period of time. So if they leave Dallas, for example, and they go to a smaller city that might have 25 officers, well, that city don't have to spend that hundreds of thousands of dollars to retrain them. And then when they go to that smaller city, they simply say, hey, whatever you've done in Dallas to get you in trouble, you are now here and you have a new opportunity. Make sure you handle your business and you stay out of trouble. However, what's the problem with that? If that officer was a bad officer in Dallas, guess what?
Right.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where they go. If they was a
Exactly.
bad apple, it doesn't matter where they go. So that's one main thing that needs to be handled nationwide. It needs to be a database that every police agency in the country is a part of that same database, so they can say, hey, if you're not an officer here, you cannot be an officer anywhere in the United States. That's one thing. Another thing that really needs to be addressed, and people need to be very mindful when they say defund the police. Now, let's
Good. That's
think
a good
about that
topic.
just a minute.
That's good
Yeah.
because that's a
Oh,
question.
yeah. Let's think about that just a second. Be very, very careful when you say defund the police. Now, let's be realistic, okay? Let's, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist or astronaut or anything of that nature. But, okay, if you're saying defund the police departments, let me ask you a simple question. Where is the crime located? Where's most crime located?
Right.
In underprivileged neighborhoods.
Right.
Okay. Now, if the officers are not going to underprivileged neighborhood right now and they at
Already.
full strength,
Right.
I'm just going to give you example of numbers. Let's say whatever city you in, whatever city that you are living in, you have 2,500 officers total at full strength. And then you come back and say, well, let's just defund the police, defund the police. And the next police cycle, you now have 2,000 police officers for that same city. Now, if 2,500 officers for a city and they still having crime, let's just be realistic. What you think gonna happen if you only have 2,000 police officers for that
Right.
same city?
So
Let's
I
be
think
realistic.
right. And so I think the best the maybe the a better way to say that is not defund, but maybe reallocate funds. You know,
Absolutely. Ab-
someone
ab- yeah.
one of the questions was, do officers receive ongoing diversity training for the communities they serve? So maybe that's one of the areas that is a national standard, is that you have to have diversity training. And then, you know, and I have my own issues about diversity training, because you can send people to diversity training,
Yeah.
you know, but
Doesn't
again,
do
we get
anything.
back to a heart issue.
Yeah.
Now, MJ Jones says that she's worked in law enforcement in Texas and in Michigan, and diversity training is required every 2 years in Texas and every year by her agency in Michigan. So, I mean,
Yes.
is that a common thing across the nation? Is diversity training, or is that something that they're just now grabbing hold to?
No, that's been, and as far as I know, that's been the case, Charlotte. Diversity training has always been there. I mean, as far as you trying to, you're saying police reform, I think it's going to be a lot more than just at the lowest level here. We need to look at educating our officers is one thing we need to do. Training is another thing as far as will help on that police reform. We know the people in Washington will have to do their job. Your senators know they have to do their job. They have to get involved. But as far as at the lowest level in a department, we need to look at training, not only every 2 years, diversity, we need training every year. You need to know what type of diversity coaches that are training your officers. You need to look at that as well. Education, what type of education does your officers have? That helps. That's going to help with police reform. And as far as training, education, and also, what else will I say? I'm going to say those two are key as far as reform at this level, at the lowest level. I'm going to say those two are key in the department, because you have to, I know what Washington is going to do. We're talking about internally. Background for your police officers, you need to make sure that you look at their background and make sure it's on point. You need to make sure that you pick up and hire maybe some more educated officers, and you need to look at your training piece and what you're doing there. Those are the three things I'm going to say.
Right. Okay, we have a question from Barbara Kelly. She says, should departments bring back community policing? It seems police officers now don't know the communities that they're serving.
I agree. I understand what you're saying. I've asked some of my students, do they know the officers in their community? And they'll say no. They don't stop and talk to them. When they do see them, it's for law enforcement purposes. It's nothing like, hello, how you doing? But yes, I think community policing is a must. That's a must. Get to know the people that live in the area. But yes, I think it needs to be more community policing. I agree.
I think when we talk about community policing, I think it's been perpetrated as being a negative. And so people are not as accepting of community policing. But community policing is nothing more than policing in your community and knowing your community. So that's not necessarily a negative thing. That's, to me, I mean, I look at that as, as a positive. If you can't talk to your police officer in the, in Starbucks or in the grocery store, or, if you, particularly a small town where I'm from, pretty much everybody knows everybody, almost. Right. And so when you have a police officer and you can't even speak to them, then that's an issue. That's an issue.
And that may be an issue, or Charlotte, that may be an issue at the hiring process too. That could be something that is looked upon in the hiring process, is what type of community involvement that you're in. See, a lot of that you may be able to see, your investigators should be able to see some of that.
Right.
Ask those questions in the hiring. If you are a police officer with experience, you should be able to tell me what type of community policing that you have done. What is your philosophy on community policing? Now, depending on where you are, especially, like I worked at a campus for about 11 years and I was a chief in Mountain View. If community policing wasn't a part of your professional repertoire, something is wrong. You had to ask that question about community policing. And I think you could do it across the board in the cities as well. I did it when I was a Lancaster police officer. I got out and I met people in my community. And that was an individual choice as well.
Now, that's where Brad comes in, because the organization that you work with is called One Community USA. So talk to us a little bit about that and the Shop Talk program that you all have, because that is really community policing. Don't you think that that's what that is?
Absolutely. And let me just explain why some of the cities do not have a lot of community policing or community engagement. It goes back to resources and funding again. In a larger city, most of the larger cities, you're going to have officers available to do community policing. But if you're in a smaller city, you might not have the resources or available manpower for them to be more active in community policing. Now, that's not an excuse. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just giving you the facts. So At One Community USA, which is a nonprofit organization which was founded by Miss Tony Brinker back in August of 2015. She understood how important it was that first responders and the community have to work together. You
Mhm.
have to work together uh, to be effective. So it originally named it was Operation Blue Shield, but it was changed to One Community USA a couple of years ago. Now, Community USA organization is strictly designed to bridge the gap between first responders and the community, and we have over 12 different programs out there. However, I came aboard back in June of last year because a good friend of mine, and also because of the mission that you're trying to get out. I'm the director of a program called Shop Talk. Shop Talk was started back in 2016 by Detective John Plunkett from the Urban Police Department. And what Shop Talk is it's a program designed to make sure we have open line of communication between the first responders and the community. And how do we do that? In the African American community, the trust has been broken. It's been fractured. It's been
Absolutely.
damaged. In order for us to get that back, we have to take baby steps. But and I know, to be realistic, we're not going to the police station, not voluntarily. So what Shop Talk does, what we simply do, we team up with local agencies, and I'll give you an example, let's say Urban. Okay. We team up with Urban Police Department, and then we go to the barber shops and to the beauty salons in that particular community, and we have an open line of communication. We'll take about two or three different officers to make sure they diversify it, because when you go into these barber shops,
Absolutely.
okay, yeah, it needs to be several different officers that go
Absolutely.
with you, because it not only benefit the barbershop or the beauty salon owners, it also benefit the officers that you take with you, because that might be the first time that they encountered somebody and it wasn't on a negative negative situation. It wasn't on a police call. It wasn't on a
Mhm.
traffic stop. They simply get to speak whatever they want to talk about for 45 minutes. They get to talk about it. Now, we might agree to disagree, but that's how you are extending an
Right.
olive branch to the community. Let them know, hey, we coming to you to hear your concerns.
Right.
You have the opportunity to be comfortable, because if you want to know what's going on in the African American community, it's two places that you used to go to: the barbershop and the beauty salon. And you could find out whatever you wanted to know in the community. So One Community USA teams up with these local agencies, and we take them. We go to the barbershop and the beauty salon, and that's how we bridge that gap. We continue to go back, because the first time you go off in there, sometimes you can feel the tension. It's tension on both sides. But
Mhm.
after you in there for 15, 20, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and they understand we're not here to arrest anybody, to cause any problem. We're here for you to have an opportunity to have a voice. A lot of times people just need to be heard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. I agree.
Now let me give you a perfect example. I take the chief of police from Urban Police Department to the barbershop, and he's off in there for 45 minutes listening to the complaints of the residents in Irving, Texas. Now, how many times would you get an opportunity to hear directly from the chief of police if you had a question? Probably not going to happen. Probably not going to happen. So that's one of the things that we do in Shop Talk. Another thing that we do in Shop Talk also is, once we team up with these barbershop and beauty salons, we'll have what is called a quarterly luncheon. We'll invite them to the police academy and the chief of police, possibly the mayor, maybe some city council members. We'll sit down with you in One Community USA. We'll provide lunch for the barbershop owners and the beauty salon owners, and we have just a open round table over
Mhm.
lunch. They get to
Mhm.
talk about whatever they want to talk about. Also, another great thing is the cadets that's in the academy. guess what they at? They also at that same function because they get to hear the complaints from the residents. Okay. And then they also get to mingle with the barbershop owners and the beauty salon owners. And then that's how you build bridges of trust. Now,
Right.
the damage didn't happen overnight, so we're not going to be able to solve the problem overnight.
Right.
But here's what I can guarantee you, though, that that has to be done. It takes a village to raise a kid. Mom and dad used to always say, and they used to always say too, Mr. Mosley, it's always three sides of every story:
Mhm.
your side, their side, and the truth.
Yep.
So, one thing that both sides have to understand is you have one side, the community has one side, but let's get to the truth because a safe neighborhood affects everybody, and that's what we're
Everybody.
trying to get to. A safe neighborhood. It affects everybody. That's universal. A
Right.
safe neighborhood is wanted by everybody, and
Right.
that's universal. Okay, so that's some of the things that we do at One Community USA to help try to bridge that gap. Uh, okay.
So let me ask a question. One of the questions that has come through is, so what are we doing to engage our young people to become law enforcement officers? Is there something that's taking place through your program, or is that something that police departments are doing nationwide?
Well, I guess I would say I'm talking to my students right now about law enforcement officers because that's what I teach, teaching criminal justice, and you have that that point within your curriculum that you talk about law enforcement. So yes, I do touch on being law enforcement, being a law enforcement officer. But what I'm hearing, Charlotte, is I'm not getting that reception. It's not warm and welcoming. It's not warm and welcoming because so much is going on right now. Our young people, they see what's happening in the community. Now, they may not take the time, like Brad was saying, to get the whole story. They may get the story from Instagram, or they may get the story from some other social media network. But being a police officer is not, it's not as popular as it may have been 30 years ago. So trying to talk to young people about being police officers, it's like it's a challenge. It's a challenge. But what I try to do is I try to portray the good side of law enforcement, that justice still prevails, even though you may not see it on a daily basis. Because you talk about community policing. How do you get a young person interested in law enforcement is by relating one police officer talking to a kid on the street.
Right.
There's nothing
Right.
wrong with that. You don't have to have a large organization or a of community police officers in order for each individual officer. They are their own community policing liaison.
Right.
You don't.
Point.
You driving around on the street I don't have to be a part of a unit in order to stop and talk to someone. So if you want to get young youth involved in law enforcement, I think law enforcement officers themselves need to take a different approach. Let's try to get them involved by showing them a better example, by being a better example. Because right now I don't really have much to say on that. They're not liking it too much, Charlotte, honestly.
Well, and I can see that as you all are talking, I'm thinking about just the times that I've been in the classroom, and now still at an elementary campus, well, a pre-K 8 campus, and you talk to like those first graders and second graders and third graders, and what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a police officer. I want to be a fireman. And then by the time they get to 8th and 9th and 10th grade, they're like, I ain't trying to do that. I ain't trying to hear you. I think right now I have 3 students out of about 70 who want to be police officers. And so, but what the concern that I'm having is finding them ROTC programs and things like that in their high schools to be a part of, so that they can get that early on experience, so that they see it's not like, it's not like Blue Bloods on TV, and it's not like, Criminal Minds,
Right.
but there are
Right.
some good sides to policing. And so the helping our community and, being that individual. I used to,
Charlotte, the ROTC programs are effective. I don't have that's not, you're looking at like the Explore program. I know at one point Dallas police had a great Explore program. I don't know if it's still that effective. I don't know.
Yes, sir.
And then when I worked at Law Magnet, which is Judge Barefoot Sanders at Townview, they created a Explore program or something like that. And I want to try to get one of their old teachers on as well. But as far as what we wanted to do at the school that I'm at Kimball, we would like to do that. But right now, with COVID going on and these kids are not back at school, and then what they're seeing on TV, it just does not. The impression of being a police officer is not there. It's not a very
right,
good impression right now. It's just the Kenosha shooting. When you look at stuff like what happened in Wisconsin, these in the minority community. See, that's another thing. You're not the kids that I serve are in lower underprivileged areas.
right,
Their perception of the police is not the same as probably
right,
the perception of the police and a kid in Greater North Dallas.
right.
You know
Yeah.
that
Right.
when my kids see them, they see them coming out of the house with someone in handcuffs.
And
Okay.
that's their mom or their dad.
Yes, or they
Right.
may see their neighbor across the street getting arrested, a house is getting raided. So that perception is not what is going to attract minorities in law enforcement, because I want to make sure we understand the difference, because the way I perceived it when I was coming up is different than what's going on now. That's
Right,
not the same. That's not the same.
right, right. And I remember, years ago, I would have parents, you see the police officer, I'm gonna tell the police officer you being bad. If you don't stop acting
Yeah.
up, I'm gonna call the police officer. Why would you tell a 5-year-old that? Because that does exactly what you're saying, is it diminishes the perception, the
Yeah.
positive perception of a
Mhm.
police officer. So
Mhm.
now I don't want to be anything like the police officer,
Yeah.
because all I do is go arrest little kids who being bad.
I used to
You
check
know,
them. I used to
yeah,
get that straight right away, Charlotte. I would not let that go. I don't care if I was in the
yes,
grocery store. I would say, hold on, let me first get that straight. If I had to
absolutely.
take a knee to get to that kid's level. It may be a
Right,
younger
Yes.
kid, so you may have to take a knee to show that personable side, because a lot of times people think police officers are like robots or whatever. You do have a personal side. You are human. So I think that's another approach to getting youth in law enforcement, is to show that you are human. Officers,
hmm,
I like seeing officers that dance with kids. I don't dance, but I like to see officers interact with kids to where they go out there and dance, or they do something like that. But you have to show that interpersonal side in order for you to attract younger audiences. You have to get involved. Social media. Every kid is on the phone right now. So
right,
if you are talking about how do you bring youth in, you may want to contact them through social media. Try to get in touch with them that way.
right,
Just the
right, right,
perception is really not good right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, just like Mr. Mosley said, right now the climate of recruiting is very difficult.
Mm.
Let me just give you a perfect example. Here in North Texas, unfortunately, the majority of police agencies are looking at the same applicant, because
Yep.
it's very difficult when you have 5 or 6 different agencies, that are short in manpower. It makes
Yeah.
it very difficult,
Yeah.
in the cities or close by.
Yeah.
So if you have one applicant, they might have 5 or 6 different choices,
Yeah.
because it's a shortage out there right now.
right,
But like Mr. Moses said, the Explorer program in Dallas is still outstanding.
Hmm.
Some of the other cities might not have that. but you also have police activity lead, which is in Dallas, which was a major program that we did work with kids on a daily basis, uh, so they can see the different side of police officers.
Right,
So programs like that are much needed because it has to start when they are little. You can't
right,
Yeah,
wait till they in the seventh
yeah.
or eighth grade. You
No,
got to
right.
get them when they're in the second and third and
Exactly.
fourth
but
grade.
but
Right.
but Charlotte, let me Brad, let me add this real quick. Let me flip the script. You gotta flip the script. We in our community, okay, we often down talk or downplay law enforcement to the point, even in our own community, to the point where we can't recruit. You know, I would love to say I won't go to school to be a police officer. But you don't hear that. You don't hear that in the school, not in the school. You don't hear it at home. You don't hear those kind of things. I want you, what do you want to become? A police officer. Okay, let's go that route. Everything is negative about policing, negative about
Right.
policing. Okay, I would love to see more African American, more Hispanics in policing. And I employ, hey, I want you to be a cop. Yes, I want you to be a cop because if you're talking about changing some of changing
Cool.
the
Mhm.
perception of it.
Uh-huh.
Okay, we need to change the demographics.
Right.
You need to start changing the demographics. If you want to deal with people in your community, you need to get some people in your community that look like you.
Like you, amen.
Yeah,
That's
so
exactly right.
I would tell a family, hey, encourage your kid to go and take the police test. So that's another way to look at it too.
So I
We
have an educator who says what Mr. Mosley is saying about parents saying, I'll call the police, is what I saw as a teacher. Some kids were so scared to see a police. And that is true. We have
Mhm.
to provide them more positive
Yes.
positive experiences with the
Mhm.
police officers so that they can know that it's okay to be
That's
a
right.
police officer.
That's
It's
right.
Yeah.
We have to have them. They're
That's
Yeah.
right.
essential
Yeah.
workers. We
That's
have
right.
to have them. Like Brad
Hey,
was saying, crime is out here.
that's right.
It's here. And so we have to have people who's willing to have a heart for other people,
Mhm.
and to do that job. Now, I do have a question and I'm going to go back to um, kind of the behavior of police officers because we talk about and we hear so much about this blue code, this
Mhm.
code that officers have. And as we're seeing the all of the uncovering of things that's happening in the last 3 or 4 weeks, this blue code runs pretty deep. And I'm a blue blood watcher. And so I know that some of the shows on TV are now addressing the blue code. And I can't remember one of the shows that my mom watched that they had a police department, and all of them were silent about it because of this blue code. And one of the officers went against it and told, and they showed how they beat him up and how they just kind of ostracized him and all of that. How deep does this blue code really go? And if it goes as deep as we're seeing, then how are we ever going to really address the wrong that's being done if the people who's supposed to protect and serve us, when they do wrong, when they take the drugs from the drug dealer and sell them on the street, or if they're doing this, then how is it that we're supposed to bridge the gap and mend the hearts that are being hurt in all of this?
Mm. Brand, what you think?
I heard
Okay.
crickets. I mean crickets,
Well,
nothing.
you, you, you let me say this. My opinion after 31 plus years of being on the streets of Dallas. Uh, you have to keep in mind that you have to be real careful of viewing what you see on TV
Yeah.
Because there's so many cop shows out there. You have Law and Order, you have Chicago PD, you have
Right.
NCIS, Miami, New Orleans, California, New York. I mean, so you have to be very careful of what you
Absolutely.
see on TV and absorb and soak that in, because I mean, you know, it when I was out there on the streets, everything didn't normally wrap up in 59 minutes just by coincidence.
Absolutely.
Everything nice, a neat bow in 59 minutes. They shot the gun out of somebody's hand. They
Mm.
arrested a triple murder. And if you look up, it was always 59 minutes that they done that. You know,
Right.
it doesn't work that way in real life. Now, the code is real. Let's just be realistic. Let's be
Right.
transparent. Yeah, it's real, but to what degree? It depends on
Mhm.
what part of the country that you are in. That I would
Mhm.
say. Uh, Now, most agencies try to handle things inside. They try to keep it inside, and they try to handle things inside. So now, is that necessarily the correct way to do everything? Not necessarily. Okay, but being old school, and a lot of the people that's running the police agencies are old school. They'll try to keep everything inside. Now, do we have to do a better job of being transparency, showing transparency at everything that we do in law enforcement? Yes, but that's the struggle. That's not going to
And it's
happen overnight. Yeah,
and it's not just law enforcement either, though, Sharon. I mean, Charlotte. I'm sorry. I mean, being transparent, like Brad saying, is yes, more transparency. What is really going on? What is really happening? But you got to look at other organizations as well.
right,
You may not have a blue code or a thin line or anything like that, but you also have other organizations that also have
Oh,
practices
absolutely.
in which they keep things or which they do that. So it's that fraternal order of policing. It's just like any other fraternity out here or any other sorority that's out here. They watch out for them, each other, and police officers also watch out for each other as well. But like Brad was saying, being transparent and being truthful, your integrity is in question, especially when you want the community to trust you. Yes,
Right.
that's when those leaders have to step in, and that's when each individual officer must be held accountable. You have
Right.
to. You have to hold them accountable. It is too much going on right now for the whole thin line or the blue code to happen. It is time to tell on your fellow officer when they have
You're
hit
wrong. Right.
another hit a suspect 4 or 5 extra times than necessary in order to gain
Right.
compliance. When we
absolutely.
clearly cell phones have captured video of so many, unadvised or over, you know, forget the thin line, forget the curtain. Let's go ahead and let it be known. Be transparent. Be transparent. I never had to worry about that, and I wasn't at a large organization like Brad, but still policing is policing at small cities just like it is in large cities. So yes, you have to be careful. And Shawnee, you said something about being ostracized. I will hit on that. Yes, that does
Yeah,
occur. Yes,
yeah,
if you are that lone officer that do decide to tell the truth, yes, that you will probably be ostracized. Yes, you will probably not have the same protection. You have policy procedure protection,
Yeah.
but you have to face that, and it may be something. It's a choice, Charlotte. It's a choice, and I ask all officers to make the right choice and to be to not protect those that are doing bad and dirty. So,
Right.
but the leadership got to step up. You got to get those guys out of here.
Right.
yeah.
Right. Right.
And I'll piggyback off of Mr. Mosley as
Uh-huh.
well. It starts at the top. It
Yeah.
it starts at the top. No doubt about it. The
Right.
leadership has the speed of the leader determine the speed of the pack.
Right.
Also, leadership is everything,
Absolutely.
especially in law enforcement, because the leader has to stand firm and let the troops know that they're
Yeah.
not going to tolerate
Yeah.
anything that's outside the line. It's just
Yeah.
not going to be tolerated.
Yeah.
And so, but that's going to take some time, though. And like Mr.
Right.
Mosley said, uh, this is one thing that I have always said, and I'll say it until I'm gone. We, as African American people as a whole, and not just African American people as a whole, I'm talking about every citizen out there. Let me tell you one of the simplest things that you can do, and that it will have a lasting impact worldwide. Simply comply,
Yeah.
comply, comply. We not. Let me give you a perfect example.
Right.
And I would stand by this until I'm gone because I've seen it. I've seen it and lived it. 99% of the officers out there, I would say 99% of them, are trying to do the right thing.
Right. Trying to
Okay,
make it home. They're just trying to get home at the end of the night.
they just trying to get home. They just trying to do the right thing. It's
Family,
that
right.
1%. It's that 1% that the news media portray that everybody is doing, but that's not the case. But if I stop you on traffic and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, let's not have court on the side of the road at 2 o'clock in the morning because you're going to get me killed and you going to get killed. So comply whether you agree or disagree with whatever's going on. Comply with that officer. And then if that officer is doing something wrong or outside the line, wait till you get home safely.
Yeah.
You at home
We said
safely.
that last
Okay? And then you can pick up the phone and call internal affairs or
Right.
call whoever you need to call while you home in the warmth of your house safely.
Right.
And then you can live to fight another day.
Right.
But
What?
you
Yeah.
need to learn to comply, though. So
And that's-
many times, you know, we don't want to follow instructions, and
That's
then
right. That's
you
right.
make that officer make a split decision that will change your life and that officer's life forever. I've
Right.
seen it happen too many times.
And just as you were saying that, one of the listeners said, comply and then complain. So,
absolutely,
but you
absolutely.
got to do that. And you're absolutely right, man. Several of these videos that go viral, you see them and you're like, dang, they told you to stop. Why did you just stop? Why did you just,
right.
you
Do
know,
not,
and
this is right.
man,
This is what I say all the time. This what oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Moses. This is what I say all the time. Do not make the officer make a life decision for you in your household.
right,
Don't put him in that situation. Do not put them in that situation. You control that. Nobody gonna take care of you better than who? You.
That's
So
right.
don't put a life changing decision in somebody else's hand. Don't do it.
right,
Don't
Yeah. You have to understand, we talked about criminal justice reform. You said something about that, Charlotte. And we know there's a problem in the criminal justice system. We know there's a problem in the policing and how we are policing people. We know that. And I need you as a citizen, as an African-American male or female, I need you to understand that if the system, you know that this system is not fair, you know that there are problems in racial and issues with policing. We know that. So what I need you to understand is comply. All right. Like Brad said, and therefore we can talk about it later, but right now it's not the time. And then you have to understand, you got to police yourself. You need to police yourself. If you know, I'm sorry, I'm tired of hearing that weed is from the earth. Please stop saying that. I'm tired of hearing it. I don't want to hear it. That is the fastest way a police officer will be in your car. Weed is illegal. Do not smoke it. Do not have it in your clothes, because once you get stopped, guess what? They're going to tell you to step out the car.
Yes.
And then you're gonna start all this popping at the mouth. See, that's not necessary because you started out the wrong way.
Wrong. You wrong, and you gonna talk lip. Yeah.
So stop that. Stop. It's not even necessary. I mean, I think that's part of the problem too. So
Well,
yeah,
this is a good segue to a couple of questions that people are talking about. And we've talked about it the last time, Marvis, you were on. We talked about the talk. What are you saying to your sons who, who teenagers, they may be out at night, not necessarily late and not necessarily doing anything wrong. They're just coming from a football game or whatever. What are you all telling your children, your sons and daughters about, more than just comply? What are you telling them that they need to do when they are confronted by a police officer?
Let's first, Charlotte, make sure you yourself, you're not dirty. That's what I'm gonna say. Make sure that you are following the law yourself. That's the first thing. And then we can talk about how you were stopped and whether or not you believe that you were not stopped, that there was no probable cause or no suspicion. We can get on the legality of it later. But first, make sure that you are straight. Even the people that you're with. I tell my son, he has his license, he's driving. Do you have your driver's license with you? You know where the insurance is in the car. If you're stopped, you keep your hands where they can be seen. You wait for the officer to give you directions. That is what we do. Now, do my white brothers have to tell their kids the same thing? They probably don't. And that is the world that we live in. So what we do is we first make sure our kids are right. And then we make sure we have all of the legal things taken care of and handled, and we will be okay. That's what it still boils down to, complying and making sure we're good.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I say the exact same thing. You definitely want to comply. And my kids and grandkids, I tell them exactly the same thing that I would tell anybody else. Follow instructions.
Yeah, follow instructions.
Yes,
That's
sir.
important.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
No, ma'am. It's just that simple. If they ask you to do something, go ahead and do it, whether you agree
with it or not.
But if they stop you, let me tell you who's in charge. It's not you.
Right.
If you get stopped, you are no longer in charge.
Right.
So just follow the instructions, comply. Like Mr. Moses said, make sure you have your driving license, make sure you have your insurance, make sure everybody in the car is also, yes, your seatbelt is on, and make sure everybody in the car is doing what they're supposed to do.
Okay, and that's what I was getting ready to address.
Make sure if somebody in your vehicle, you're responsible for them and their behavior because it affects you if you get stopped.
Yeah.
So if your friend has a gun with them that you don't know about, you
could get caught up.
They don't have a license.
Right, you could get caught up. So I tell them all the time, be very careful who you run with.
That's right.
Because you can get the same charge with the people that you run with, and you haven't done anything.
That's right.
If you're at the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people, you get the same exact charge. So be very mindful, like Mr. Moses said. We all understand where weed come from. That don't make it legal. We understand where guns come from, but using a gun as a weapon to kill somebody don't make it legal.
Right.
So let's stop making excuses and follow the law and comply. And like your listener said, complain when you home safely.
Right.
But
do complain. Do complain.
Yes.
Definitely do it the right way, because even though what I've seen also is the complaints. I've heard people say, well, I've tried to complain, but then what happened? I stopped. I didn't go the next step. I went, or I called the police department and I got the runaround, and all of a sudden it's like, man, forget it. They get frustrated with the process. Okay, this is a big system that we're talking about. You are calling and you're just one person trying to make a complaint about an officer. What you need to do is understand the system, know that you're going to have, it's not going to be You're not going to call Dallas Police Department, be like, hey, I want to make a complaint right. No, you have to go through the process.
Right.
So when you file that complaint, understand that you're going to have a process to go through. That's all. You can file a
Right.
complaint and just don't get frustrated at the process. Go through it and file your complaint. If it's legit, file it.
So one of the caller or one of the viewers is asking, how do we get our school system to enforce the Sandra Bland Act? Schools should be teaching kids 9th through 12th grade how to engage with police officers. And I know,
They
Marvis, you're doing that as a criminal justice teacher,
But
but how do we
see,
get that?
I thought they okay. I'm not saying my curriculum. I'm teaching my curriculum, and through my experience is what I'm telling our youth how to deal or what to do when confronted by police. That's through my experience. No, that's not what she's saying. It's actually get them to comply. That probably would come from Dallas ISD Police Department with them getting them that is an actual program
Mm,
that they have to put together. That's what I believe. Okay. What I'm doing is simply my own educating from my experience in my classroom. So yes, that is a good point. That's a good point. And I thought they had to do that. I thought they were. Is it through the driving license? Is it through you have to take the driver's license course?
I have no idea. And she's asking, is it, she said it was mandated that
It is. I believe
for
it.
them to do that.
Yes, I do believe it, and I've heard of it, but I don't know at what level that's being done because I haven't seen that directly. So that's a good question. That is a very good
Right.
question.
Hmm.
Probably has to come from the ISD police. Yes.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, I tell you what, it is right at 8 o'clock, and man, this has been a powerful session. You guys have given lots of great information. You have informed our viewers and our listeners. Hopefully, people will take this information to heart.
Mm-hmm.
I will often wear my Black Lives Matter mask, and I was at somewhere the other day, and there was a gentleman, he stared me down so hard. I know he wanted to say something. And I tell people, you don't know if I'm saying Blue Lives Matter or Black Lives Matter. They both start with B. So we have to be careful about that. I personally have too many police officers in my family.
Mm-hmm.
From my brother to my nephew who's watching, to Marvis, to cousins and uncles. And so we have to, the best example that I have heard about Blue Lives and Black Lives Matter is the house that's burning on the street in your neighborhood. Well, all of the houses are important, every last one of them. But the
Mm-hmm.
house that's on fire is the one that needs water right now.
Yeah.
Right.
And so all lives are important. And I'm not understanding what's so hard about that, about understanding that. We're seeing people getting into fights and arguments and killing people behind Black Lives Matter. They're not saying that other lives don't matter. It's just that this particular life is the one that's not being the most valued right now.
Yeah.
So, how do you all respond to that?
Like, here's my feeling on that, and I totally agree 150% what you're saying. That definitely Black Lives Matter and all lives matter. Just because you're specifying Black Lives Matter, that doesn't say you're not saying all lives that matter. But
Right.
here is what we have to do a better. Uh, what we have to do better in the African American community. And I'm just giving you an example. Okay, this is what has frustrated me for the 31 plus years that I was on the police department. Uh, Anytime somebody's life is taken, it matters. It matters. Now, does
Absolutely.
it matter? Does it matter if it's the police officer taking their life?
Right.
Okay, yes, absolutely, because we are held to different standards, a
Mm-hmm.
different accountability. I understand that. But Does the same thing happen when another African American male kills another African American male? Shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
that matter also?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it should.
Mm-hmm.
That
It
should
should.
matter also. So
Mm-hmm.
we should be in a uproar
Mm-hmm.
when it's 800 plus killings in Chicago, Illinois for the
Mm-hmm.
last 6 or 7 years. We should be in an uproar, but
Yeah,
you barely hear about any of
that's
that.
right. That's
Right.
right.
So are you telling me Black Lives Matter, but it only matters if a law enforcement officer kills another African American?
I
Yeah,
agree.
It's okay for
yeah.
800 plus murders to happen in Chicago, Illinois every single year, and 70 to 80% of them is African
Mm-hmm.
American killing African Americans.
Yeah,
That matters also.
That
yeah.
does.
So,
I agree.
so when people say Black Lives Matter,
Mm-hmm.
that's where people get confused at. Because you
Mm-hmm.
telling me it matters, but
Right.
it only matters if you're killed by law enforcement.
Right.
It doesn't matter if we killing each other.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. I
And
agree.
but okay, and then too, I would say I agree with Brad. I do. I, but all races are killing their own, their own kind. Everyone is killing. It's a lot of killing going on. Period. Caucasians are killing Caucasians. They do. But for the what we're talking about right now, and we're saying, why is there a problem when we say Black Lives Matter? Why is that a problem? Charlotte, that's the individual person themselves just don't, they have a problem with them. That's just on them. I mean, that's all I'm going to say about that one, because I can stand and say that all white lives matter, or I can say that all Asian lives matter, or whatever the case may be. But based on what we have seen, that is the reason why that came out. Black Lives Matter. And I think it's okay to say Black Lives Matter. It's okay to say whatever you believe. And it should not be taken to mean that you don't feel that all lives matter. We're just saying right now, when you clearly can see a law enforcement officer treat an African American person a little bit, not a little, but a whole lot different
Right.
than you treat a Caucasian or Asian person, given the same circumstances, okay, then
Problem.
yes, you have a point to make. And yes, you can say in protest that Black Lives Matter. You can still do that. I think that you have that right. You
Right.
have that right. That's your First Amendment right to protest that
Right.
Black Lives Matter.
Right.
And I also agree with Brad, but we should also be upset and protest Black Lives Matter when multiple African Americans kill
Right.
African Americans.
Right. Absolutely.
Yes, yes. But
Absolutely.
for the moment, Charlotte, Black Lives Matter, and that movement was that, and we should be able to support it, or however we feel.
Right. I agree. I agree.
And right, and let me piggyback off that. I think that was a great example, Mr. Mosley, of what you said there, no doubt. One thing that we definitely want to make sure that we do when we protest, let's make sure we protest peacefully.
Yeah.
It's okay to protest,
Mm-hmm.
have no problem protesting, but let's make sure we protest peacefully and do it organized and do it peacefully. And just a recommendation, you can agree to disagree,
Mm-hmm.
but if it was me and I was leading a protest, I would try to always do it in the daytime because you can see what's going on in the daytime. But normally, when it's 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night and it's 3,000 people protesting,
You can't
it's
see.
going to be very, very difficult to
Mm.
determine the good from the bad.
Right.
Okay. So now you're putting that back on the law enforcement.
Right.
You're putting that back on the law enforcement because it only takes one or two people in the crowd
Mm-hmm.
to start something.
Exactly.
And it's 11, 12, 1 o'clock at night. It is impossible to
Right.
determine basically who's doing what. So you
Mm.
have to be
Right.
very
Right.
careful. It's okay to protest,
Right.
but let's do it peacefully and let's try to maintain the daytime hours so it's safe for everybody.
Right. Right. And my motto is, in anything you do it decently and in order.
In
It-
order.
Mm-hmm.
just do it
Yeah.
decently and in order, and that'll cover all of that. that'll cover out, because the scripture says so. You know, if we just do it decently and in order, then that puts us in the right place, in the right frame of mind. And I agree with that. You know, do it during the daytime so that you can make sure that things are taken care of, that you can see, you know, where that bottle is being thrown from, you
Right,
know, and
exactly.
that kind of
Right.
thing. And I think at the end of the day, it all boils down to a simple word: respect.
Yeah.
Just respect each other, whether it's
Mhm.
law enforcement, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a police
Yeah.
officer, whether it's a citizen on the street. It doesn't matter whether it's a homeless person, a black, white, Asian, Hispanic. It
Right.
doesn't matter. We're all human. So just
Yeah.
respect the life of another human being.
Yeah.
That's it. And
Yeah.
I think that in itself will carry us so far.
Mhm.
So guys, it has been a pleasure having you all on tonight. We have got to do this again. Marvis, you have been a regular for us. People have asked about you because you are so vocal. Brad Deason, you're gonna be one of my new go-to guys now for the for our military. I apologize. Something obviously came up with our other two guests. And so Giovanna Darrow, who is in California, actually, and so works with the undercover narcotics unit. So we wanted to actually hear from her, and Mr. Brooks, Officer Brooks, who was scheduled to be on, got caught up in some things. So, but we always want to make sure that we have a diverse group on, so that we can get various perspectives.
Mhm.
We just conversation, and as Brad said, we can agree to disagree, but at the end of the day, we don't have to leave bickering at each other or disliking one another because we disagree. You know, friction is good. All
Yeah.
friction is not bad. You know, it takes friction underneath your hood to get your car going. So we have to have sometimes friction in order to get things moving. So again, I appreciate you guys for being on here. You are totally in my debt for doing this. We are over the time just a little bit, but you guys were so great. Questions were still coming, and people are still just kind of applauding you guys and just saying how great you are. So thank you. We hope to hear from you soon. You know, if there's anything your girl can do for you, please let me know.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Until next Friday, we'll see you guys. Thank you. Have a good
Thank
night.
Thank you for having us. Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Good
You
night.
are welcome.